The palace of Zerathia gleamed like a jewel beneath 3 crimson suns, its crystalline spires reaching toward the heavens. Within its walls, Princess Gracie lay dying. She was magnificent even in her suffering, scales of iridescent purple and gold covering her serpentine form, wings folded against her back like crumpled silk. Her kind, the Drakari, had ruled the Andromeda sector for 10,000 years. They were ancient, powerful, and proud. But now their princess could barely lift her head from her cushions. "Another one has failed," growled King Vexthor, his massive claws scraping against the marble floor. 17 doctors from 17 worlds, and none can cure her." Jake stood quietly in the corner of the chamber, a cleaning rag in his hands. He was human, small, weak, short-lived by galactic standards. The Drakari had found his species only 50 years ago, drifting in primitive ships between their tiny solar system's planets. Humans were considered useful enough as servants, intelligent enough to follow complex orders, but nothing more. "The fever spreads," whispered Dr. Kelvix, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix. "Her neural pathways deteriorate. I estimate 3 solar cycles before complete organ failure." The Queen released a sound like breaking mountains. Jake winced. He'd been assigned to Princess Gracie's chamber for 6 months now, arriving every morning before dawn to clean, to organize, to be invisible. He'd watched her condition worsen week by week. "Leave us," the king commanded, and the doctors filed out, their various forms shuffling, floating, or phasing through the doorway. Jake moved to follow, but Princess Gracie's eyes, brilliant amber, still sharp despite her illness, locked onto him. "Stay," she whispered in galactic common, her voice like wind through ancient caves. "Please." The king looked at his daughter with such profound grief that Jake felt his chest tighten. Then the massive dragon nodded and departed, leaving the human alone with the dying princess. "You're the quiet one," Gracie said, attempting a smile that showed rows of crystalline teeth. "Jake, yes? You've been kind. You move. Gently." Jake approached slowly, setting down his cleaning supplies. "Your Highness should rest. I've done nothing but rest for months." She coughed, and sparks of bioluminescence flickered across her scales. "Tell me about Earth, please. I want to hear something new, something that isn't medical diagnostics." So Jake talked. He told her about rain, how humans loved and feared it in equal measure. He described autumn leaves, the smell of bread baking, the sound of children laughing in playgrounds, things that seemed impossibly mundane but made the princess's eyes brighten with wonder. "Your world sounds beautiful," she murmured. "Simpler than this." "Different," Jake corrected gently. "Not simpler, just different." As they spoke, Jake noticed something, a smell. Faint, almost imperceptible, but wrong. Chemical. Artificial. His mother had been a nurse before the Drakari arrived, and she'd taught him that sometimes the simplest observations mattered most. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "may I ask, when did you first become ill?" 6 months ago," Gracie replied. "I woke one morning with a headache that never left." 6 months. The same time, Jake had been assigned here. He looked around the chamber with new eyes. 17 doctors had examined the princess, run their scans, their tests, their complex analyses. But had any of them looked at her environment? "Your Highness, would you permit me to investigate something?" Gracie tilted her head, confused but intrigued. "Investigate what?" Jake moved to her sleeping platform, an enormous bed of temperature-regulated cushions and precious metals. He knelt down and looked beneath it. There, hidden in the shadows, was a small device, hexagonal, pulsing with a sickly green light. Jake's blood ran cold. "What is it?" Gracie asked, trying to lift herself to see. Jake carefully pulled it out, his hands trembling. He recognized Drakari script on its surface. It's a poison emitter. A slow-release toxin disperser. The room fell silent except for Gracie's ragged breathing. Someone, Jake continued, his voice hollow, has been poisoning you, not with a disease, with targeted neural toxins. The doctors were looking for illness, for biological causes. They never looked for sabotage. Gracie's eyes widened. That's impossible. Who would— I don't know, Your Highness, but this explains why you only feel worse in your chambers, why the symptoms never match any known disease. Jake stood, device in hand. We need to show this to your father. Now. The revelation sent shockwaves through the palace. The device was traced to Lord Caxter, a high-ranking noble who'd sought to claim the throne by eliminating the heir. Within days, with the poison source removed and proper treatment administered, Princess Gracie began to recover. 3 weeks later, she stood on her balcony, wings spread wide, feeling the sun on her scales for the first time in months. Jake was preparing to return to his duties in the lower levels when she called him back. Jake, she said, her voice strong again. 17 of the galaxy's greatest minds failed to save me. They came with their advanced technologies, their millennia of knowledge, their unshakable confidence. She smiled. And a human servant with a cleaning rag looked under my bed. Jake blushed. I noticed something seemed off, Your Highness. You noticed because you were present, because you listened, because you didn't assume that complexity required a complex answer. Gracie extended her claw, placing something in his palm, a medallion bearing the royal seal. My father is establishing new protocols. Humans will no longer be restricted to servant roles. Your people see things we've forgotten to look for. Jake stared at the medallion, speechless. Sometimes, Gracie continued, looking out at the stars, salvation doesn't come from the powerful or the ancient. Sometimes it comes from the observant, the humble, the ones who care enough to check the shadows. She met his eyes. Thank you, Jake, for reminding us that wisdom and rank are not the same thing. As Jake left the palace that evening, walking among his fellow humans with new possibility on the horizon, he couldn't help but smile. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as the youngest, weakest species. But perhaps they'd brought something valuable after all, the simple, profound gift of paying attention. And sometimes, in a universe of cosmic complexity, that was exactly what was needed.